Here's him celebrating
He's
in
having a good old
Dubai,
time.
Lawrence.
Yeah, look at him.
He's got some friends. Who's with him?
Yeah, he should be very happy. He's a starting quarterback getting in. That look like my man Kyle Pitts right there.
There you go.
That is Kyle Pitts. Did Kyle Pitts sign a new contract or something?
No.
He's smiling bigger than Justin
Man,
Fields.
He's so happy.
He happy as hell. It's like, now I understand celebrating life, but that is the smile of a man who just went for 1,400 receiving yards and 10 touchdowns. The only problem is that ain't what Kyle Pitts got. Kyle Pitts keeps celebrating life, man, but damn, get on that field, dog.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour. I'm Jay Croucher, Lawrence Jackson, Connor Rogers, Matthew Berry, wearing some clothes that fit very wonderfully today, Matthew.
Thank you very much. Yeah, maybe Kyle Pitts was celebrating that he's just stealing money from the Falcons. Real quickly, before we get into everything, we've got love-hate free agency coming up, lots to get into today. But I have to tell you about something that happened to me yesterday.
Okay.
So it starts off sad, but hang on, I'm just going to...
Thanks for letting us know.
Does it end happy?
Show mood is phenomenal.
Yesterday I was at a celebration of life for a man named Zach Jones. Zach was a researcher at ESPN for a number of years. He was one of the Swan, for anyone that remember to listen to the old 0601 Fantasy Focus show, the Swan, Zach Jones, he was our show researcher. Unfortunately, he passed away a few months ago. And so it was a celebration of life. The point of the story is it was a celebration of life, and there were a number of former ESPN colleagues, his friends. It was a very well-attended event. Zach was a wonderful guy, contributed to my Love-Hate column and Fantasy Football Now back in the day. So really missed Zach. A lot of love for him in the room. It was awesome. But as you might imagine, because he was a former ESPN researcher, some of the people that were there, former ESPN researchers. And I don't know if people know this, but Big Show, our own Big Show, is a former ESPN researcher. So, before he came over to NBC,
There he is.
Hey, there he is.
In
There's
all his
Big
glory.
Show.
Big Show.
So there's Big Show.
With a red
But here's the
filter
story.
over his
So
face.
anyway, so the rest of the story is, so I'm at this celebration of life, and one of Zach's neighbors comes up to me. He's just like, "Hey, Matthew," and I'm like, "Hey." He introduces himself. His name's Scott. And he goes, "Listen, I love Happy Hour. I'm a big fan of the show. I watch it every day." I'm like, "Thank you so much." I said, "Well, Big Show is here." And he went, "Whoa, Big Show is here?" He freaked out, and so I brought Big Show over. And so I want you guys to understand there is a subsection of our fan base that are Big Showiacs
there it is.
that are
Big showmen.
Big
Nope,
showmen.
hitting the pose on them right now.
I'm just trying to figure out what do we call this subset of people?
Yeah.
Because it's like, how Parrot Heads, Jimmy Buffett fans are Parrot Heads, Grateful Dead fans are Dead Heads. Like, are they Big Show Heads? Are they
We'll
Big
land
Heads?
on something.
Are they the Big Showers? Are they the Big Showers, Lawrence?
I like
Showman.
Big Showers is up there.
Yeah.
'Cause that could go a lot of ways.
I know. Big Show Nation,
Big Show, that's
Yeah. Like I'm trying to
getting
think
closer.
of what's a nickname here for the fan base that loves Big Show out there, the
I love
crazy
it.
Big
This is
Showers
like-
out there.
This is like Seinfeld fans whose favorite character is like Jay Peterman.
Right.
Exactly.
I like it.
It's a niche crew, but it's a very dedicated.
Very
niche
dedicated.
crew.
And all kinds of
It should
festivals.
be
Yeah.
no
I love Jay
surprise,
Peterman.
though. It should be no surprise because the man's name is Big Show.
Right.
Like, Big Show is basically big shot, big stuff, big air.
Yeah,
Like, he,
I know.
like,
There's a presence.
He is.
yeah.
There's no question about it. The other thing that was surprising about this is just like I mentioned, like I saw a bunch of people that I used to work with at ESPN at this thing, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, how's NBC going?" and blah blah. And I say, "Oh yeah, and I'm over there with Big Show," and they'd be like, "Who's Big Show?" And because Big Show's real name is Chris, and so he wasn't really known as Big Show back there. He was known as Chris. I'd be like, "Big Show," and they'd be like, "Oh, you mean Chris?" I'm like, yeah. But it's so weird,
Wow. Disappointing that you revealed his name and shattered the Big Show mystique. But
No,
that's
I didn't
okay.
reveal his
Big
last
Show.
name. His name is Big Show. He is Big Show.
Don't tell us the last name.
And I'm not going to say the last name. And to all the Big Showers out there, that's what I think we might be going with. All the Big Showers out there, he is always and forever Big Show. Scott was happy to meet me. He was excited to meet Big Show.
Well,
rightfully so.
speaking of former ESPNers, today who drinks free, producer Damian Dabrowski.
Another one, yes.
Yes.
Another former
Who is
NBC,
getting married
ESPN.
and has his bachelor party.
Yes, he does.
So he's getting after it.
Absolutely. He is in Raleigh, North Carolina with his closest friends that are watching NCAA basketball all day and likely drinking and hopefully drinking for free. So anyway, we love you, Producer Damien. His last days as a free man, as they say.
Indeed.
It's all over now.
It's all over now.
Yep. That's why Big Show's gracing us with his presence today. Actually, if you're wondering how this all tied together.
There you go. That's exactly right. Big Show's in the chair.
As you teased off the top, Matthew, it is love-hate day for free agency. You like to explain the concept of our segments in great depth, so would you like to do that here?
Thank you, Jay, and I would like to, yes. Look, normally love-hate, you guys sort of get it, but with free agency, it's very specific. Just as this is in terms of the free agency moves that happen with the player and the player's team, free agent moves that help their fantasy value, they are loves. Fantasy moves that hurt their value. Free agent moves that hurt their value, they are, quote, hate. I'll just give you one quick example is Daniel Jones. Daniel Jones is on the love list and the others receiving votes. It's not saying I love Daniel Jones this year, I don't. But whatever Daniel Jones' value was last year, holding a clipboard on the sideline for the Vikings, it's clearly now, increased. He has more fantasy value this year because he's got a legit shot at starting for the Colts. And so that's just sort of the example specific to this free agency love-hate. Loves are people whose fantasy value went up in free agency. Hates are ones that went down.
Yep. Okay. Well explained, Matthew. And in a shocker, minus 600 shot gets up. The first guy on the love list is Jayden Daniels. And we heard from Laramie Tunsil talking about Jayden Daniels.
I damn sure can't wait to watch Jayden Daniels. He's a baller, and just from seeing this on TV and watching film, and it seemed like he's a better dude too. And just hearing that from a lot of people just around the locker room, and his teammates from the other show, I know a couple of those guys. Just a good person, a baller, so I can't wait to make my job hella easy.
I will say it would have been very cool if he'd showed up in that interview wearing the mask.
When are you going to show up to the show wearing the mask?
Maybe opening day. We'll see.
As we see the Next Gen Stats tweet about Laramie Tunsil in terms of pressure rate allowed at left tackle since 2022. Only 4 players have allowed less pressure than Laramie Tunsil, truly one of the elite tackles in the game. Lawrence, last year Jayden Daniels had, I don't think it's controversial to say that he had the greatest rookie season that anyone has ever had. What do you think the ceiling is for him in year 2? How much better can he get?
Well, he was quarterback 4 in fantasy points per game in 2024 as a rookie, so his ceiling is quarterback 1, and it wasn't just that he had big spike weeks. He had 8 games over 23 fantasy points. So now you add a Laramie Tunsil, you add a Deebo Samuel. Look, this was a team that we watched them win these games and go deep into the playoffs, but we still looked at the roster and said they could get better at a lot of spots, and that's exactly what they're doing. So as Michael Jordan once said, the ceiling is the roof for Mr. Jayden Daniels.
And he's a quarterback last year that he was 35th in average time to throw when you look at the qualifying quarterbacks, which means that he's a guy that likes to hold the ball. Now he has more time because he actually has an offensive line that can allow these deeper drops, throw the ball down the field, not just be everything quick game, which is what they tried to design, and it worked. So I think this opens up the offense to a new dimension by having that franchise tackle to keep him upright.
Listen, when you give Jayden Daniels time, great things can happen.
Yes.
Just ask Chicago, right? And so, by the way, and you just mentioned sort of those quick screens. That's the other thing that happened in free agency years. They went out and acquired Deebo Samuel, right? The Commanders ran the second most wide receiver screens in the NFL last season. And whatever you think of Deebo Samuel, I promise you, he's an upgrade over Olamide Zaccheaus and Diami Brown, right? I know some people think, fat Deebo, and he may be washed and everything like that. I'm betting on it's a contract year for Deebo. I think things had gone sour in San Francisco. New opportunity here as well. Adam Peters, former assistant general manager in San Francisco, obviously knows Deebo well, was part of the organization that drafted him, was there in 49er territory for a long time with Deebo. So I'm banking on a big comeback, and whatever he is, he will be an upgrade for this offense. So again, adding Tunsil, adding Deebo Samuel, bringing back Zach Ertz, underrated move, but again, somebody who was kind of a very a great security blanket for Jayden Daniels last year, really clutch on a lot of third downs. So I think it's been a very good offseason so far for Jayden Daniels.
Yeah, I think we kind of forget, 2021 Deebo Samuel was the second best wide receiver in football after Cooper Kupp statistically. 2 years ago, he was a massive weapon on a team that was the 1 seed and went to the Super Bowl. So it was a tough year for Deebo. We'll see about the body and whether that can bounce back. So I think that is the key thing for him, but certainly some upside. Some upside as well, Connor, for Caleb Williams, who I think might be the most interesting player player in the NFL going into next year. How much do you think, what is the upside for him now in this Ben Johnson offense?
Well, the fact that they could actually develop a run game, I think, and I don't think the starting running back for this team is on the roster right now, full transparency. But the reason to develop the run game for Caleb Williams is Ben Johnson, he cares about under center play action. If you get under center play action and the defenses start to bite on that, the best aspect of Caleb Williams is his ability to throw the ball down the field. So that's what they want to develop in the long term. And now they have a totally new interior offensive line. So this group's going to be a lot better. They're going to be able to develop that run game, open up the pass game for the best version of Caleb Williams. Ben Johnson obviously is stapled to his hip. That was the point of this hire. And the dividends it pays could be massive for the young quarterback after an up-and-down rookie season.
Yeah, you're looking at this offensive line on the screen now. Joe Tooney, we know he could play guard or he could play tackle. Yes. Drew Dahlman, he comes from the Falcons, who they had one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. But look, Caleb Williams, he didn't have the team was bad, but he himself didn't have a bad rookie season. It's just that Jayden Daniels was so good that his 20 touchdowns to 6 interception ratio looks horrific when you're not winning the games. This is a guy who was 11 yards shy of running for 500 yards, Caleb Williams. So when you think about that, like, he could be teetering closer to that quarterback 10 to 12 range.
Yeah, and by the way, I don't even think it wasn't just Jayden Daniels, right? I mean, like, Bo Nix had a great year.
Too, but it's
Bo
like
Nix, and you saw signs of life from Drake Maye, and just what you saw, Caleb Williams just made some kind of boneheaded mistakes, but also just made some throws where you're like, oh damn,
number one
like that's the guy why he was. It's worth noting that last year, when not pressured, his passer rating was almost 96. Again, so give him time, and like one of the knocks on Caleb is he held the ball too long, but improving the offensive line in this massive way. And by the way, and also getting Ben Johnson as a play caller and a head coach, I think helps the thing. I thought the most important thing that Ben Johnson said in that opening press conference was like, everything I do is built around this quarterback. Sometimes you see coaches come in and saying, we're running my system. But he literally came in and said, I am going to study, I'm going to talk with Caleb. Whatever Caleb likes to do, that's what we're going to do. And the stuff that he doesn't want to do, the stuff that he's not great at, we're not going to do that. And so I think given the creativity of Ben Johnson, the improvement in the offensive line, year 1 to year 2, still has DJ Moore, still has Rome Odunze. I do think Caleb Williams should be in the kind of QB 10 to 14 range for me next year.
With a lot of upside, which is what you love in that range.
Yeah, I understand it was against the Jags, but that game that he played in London where he had the 5 touchdowns, like, you don't show those flashes and then fail in the NFL. And that offensive line might be the most upgraded unit in all of football. And also, it's difficult to assess coaching, but it might be the most upgraded offensive coaching situation in the league
I'm with you.
as well. Justin Fields, Connor, your quarterback now.
Yeah.
I think the question is, I felt like at times under Arthur Smith that they shackled Fields a little bit. He didn't have those berserk, crazy runs that he was having in Chicago. How much do you think he's going to run the ball in New York?
A ton. It's as simple as that. I think that's one of the main reason why they want him in this offense, because his ability to run the ball opens up the ability for Breece Hall to run the football. The Jets were so predictable in the run game last year where teams sold out against Breece and he couldn't do anything. And the line was solid for the most part, but they need more blocking from their tight ends, and they need that ability to kind of threaten with the quarterback run game. And the relationship with Garrett Wilson, where that's built in. Like, you want all the targets to go to Garrett Wilson. Well, they have no other receivers, so you're getting that right now. We'll see after the draft. But for Fields, we know what he could do when he's a starter. He's guaranteed to be the starter. I don't care what anything they say. They're paying him to start this year, and they are going to do designed runs to kind of also counter off the off-script plays. That's a lot of fantasy points for Justin Fields.
And I think this is his actual shot. In Pittsburgh, it really wasn't his shot. He kind of had to look over his shoulder, and he played solid, but it wasn't to the point where they could just keep him in the game. But you mentioned Garrett Wilson and him teaming up back with him. Justin Fields, in his 6 games, he completed 66% of his passes and had a 5-to-1 TD to interception ratio. That's all the best of his career. So with that running, which he averaged almost 40 rushing yards per game, with Garrett Wilson, with that running game, we could potentially be looking at his best fantasy year yet. Think about it. He was once a QB6 for the Bears. Like, they had nothing around him. That man ran for 1,100 American rushing yards. Not Australian rushing yards, American rushing yards. Wow. So we might be in for something now.
I mean, look, Garrett Wilson's the best wide receiver he's ever played with in his career. Right? And in terms of just in the pros. And right, he is going to this team knowing that he is the guy. He doesn't have to look over his shoulder. And Arthur Smith, who as much as as much fun as we've had with Arthur Smith over the years on this show, I thought Arthur Smith did a good job as the coordinator for the Steelers last year, given what he had to work with. But I do think in the Jets system, they will, to your point, they will do more design runs. I think this will be an offense designed more around Justin Fields and less around kind of like, we want to run the ball, play good defense, and not turn the ball over. Right. I mean, exactly. Yeah. Arthur Smith and Mike Tomlin, it's going to be a conservative offense. And I think the Jets will be more aggressive and certainly give Fields chances to earn those sweet, sweet fantasy points.
And one thing I'll say, too, the 7th overall pick is probably a tight end or a right tackle. Who does that help? Yep. It helps Justin Fields.
Yes, it does.
The middle of the field throwing and the blocking. And Tyler Warren.
Because he can do both. He can
Tyler Warren helps
other
both.
ways. Yeah.
So,
before we move off Fields, Matthew, do you think that Fields is a guy who has a wide range of outcomes, or do you think that we kind of just know what he is and that he is a low-end quarterback one and he doesn't really have the upside that he might have had a couple of years ago?
Somewhere in between, in terms of I don't think he has a wide range of outcomes because I don't think because of the rushing, there's always going to be a floor there. If he's on the field, he's always going to earn fantasy points because of the legs. I mean, Tim Tebow was a usable fantasy quarterback, right? Because of the legs. If you're a legitimately mobile quarterback, you'll always have a floor. So I don't think there's a scenario where Justin Fields washes out unless he loses his job. And I don't see, given where the Jets are, I think Fields, barring injury, will get the entire year to prove he has a chance to be the guy when you think about what they're paying him and you think about what's behind him, right? So I don't think there's a wide range of outcomes on that side, but I do think there is if he can put it together, he's got top 5 quarterback in fantasy upside, right? I mean, again, if the passing can match the rushing, he's right there with any of the guys. It's just a question of can the passing be consistent enough? Because that's been the challenge with him throughout his career is he makes some big throws, but then he also makes some, you're like, he can't do 3rd and 5. And you're like, what was that?
Yep. Okay, let's take a look at some others receiving votes, some familiar names. Joe Burrow, who gets back his 2-star wide receivers. Geno Smith. And Mike Gesicki, yes.
That was 67% of his passing yards last year with those 3 guys.
Indeed. Mike Gesicki, no one celebrates a first down like he does. Geno Smith, now in Vegas. Daniel Jones, potentially the starter in Indianapolis, even if it's not week 1, though it may be. And then Matthew Stafford upgrades to Davante Adams as his wide receiver 2 alongside Puka Nacua.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think the big one here is Geno Smith going from playing outdoors in Seattle, going to playing indoors in Las Vegas, reunited with Pete Carroll, where he was a QB9 a couple of years ago in 2022 under Pete Carroll, right? He averaged almost 18 fantasy points per game. And Chip Kelly's going to be calling the plays. And so Chip Kelly does 2 things, right? Fast pace of play, which is good, so more offensive snaps for Geno Smith. He also uses the quarterback. So I do think Geno's not Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen, but he does have a little bit of speed, and so could you get 20 to 30 yards out of Geno Smith? Gives you a couple extra points fantasy-wise, so I think he'll be more mobile in Las Vegas than he was at Seattle under Chip Kelly, throwing to Brock Bowers, throwing to Jacoby Myers, and I don't think they're done with that pass-catching room yet either, so I think it'll be an upgrade in talent around Geno from what he would have had in Seattle this year.
The point you make about pace, that's something that I feel like in football, people don't talk about pace that much, whereas, say, in the NBA, we do talk about pace. The fact that, the Heat play at the 28th fastest pace, that's bad for Tyler Hero scoring points, obligatory Tyler Hero reference, but I do think that probably hasn't infiltrated football as much where, they're going to run more plays. That's just more additional chances to put up passing yards lines.
It does. It matters to, the teams and their opponents. They talk about that. We just don't talk about it as much because it's not something that you're it's so much other stuff going on and you're watching on broadcast and it's we don't care about how many plays he actually runs. Well, it actually does matter.
And last year in Ryan Grubb's offense, they passed over expectation so much. They were always at the top in that category. But the bad that comes with that is Geno threw 15 picks last year, right? That's a high mark for him. Maybe this kind of dials that back in while still playing at a good passing pace. And you got to love the weapon in Brock Bowers. I think they'll add another wide receiver. I think their line is actually underrated across football. So this landing spot, I don't know if it's a drastic improvement, but there is some upside to it.
By the way, this is going to sound dumb, but let's say he gets, 5 over the course of the year, he gets 5 visits with Tom Brady. Brady's going to be involved in that franchise. Just that's invaluable when, if he can get an hour with Brady here and there and be listen, I noticed you're doing this and think about this and have you thought about that? So I think this is definitely an upgrade for Geno Smith's fantasy value. I think he's in that mid-tier QB2 range with some QB1 upside in the right matchup.
Yep. Okay, let's get to the hate list. Sam Darnold, Geno's replacements in Seattle. You mentioned kind of the Geno threw 15 picks. Wouldn't be shocked if Sam Darnold throws 15 picks in this Seattle offense.
I would probably take the over on that, honestly, if they let him throw a lot. And there's just a lot going on here, right? They need help at wide receiver even after getting Cooper Kupp, because we're going to talk about him in JSN. It's kind of weird. They still need a real perimeter target unless you're banking the house on MVS. You could argue the interior of this offensive line needs to be fixed across all three spots.
Yep.
I mean, I think they need a center. I think they need a new left guard. We'll see what Anthony Bradford could do at right guard. Not an elite pass protector, more of a run blocker. Darnold is a guy. The story is the same all the time. When he's under pressure, things get out of control. So Seattle really, really needs to and they have the draft capital to do it. But this line has got to look different after the draft, Lawrence.
I mean, they give the second most quarterback pressures last
Right.
year. They have to fix this line, but how much fixing can they even do?
Yeah, and you
be
talked
healthy,
about
too.
the interceptions. Sam Darnold threw 12 of them. The season was so great that we don't talk about it much. And a lot of folks, we tend to talk about how he ended the season, but there was a stretch, weeks 5 through 10, where he threw 6 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. He was QB 25 in fantasy in that time. But it's like the next 8 games, he went crazy. The first month of the season, he went crazy. So it was that little middle part of the season where it's like, oh, man, Sam Darnold. But then he got back to balling again, and we forgot about it. So it's like, with this team, with this line, like, how many of those weeks do we get versus how many of those great weeks will we get?
On that, Lawrence, the Detroit Lions in Week 18 dropped about 7 Sam Darnold interceptions as well. It could have been a lot worse just on that game.
Just everywhere you point to is a downgrade, right? KOC to Clint Kubiak as a pass caller. I'd argue that is a downgrade. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson to JSN and Cooper Kupp. That is a downgrade, right? Playing indoors in Minnesota, playing outdoors in Seattle, that is a downgrade. So in terms of atmosphere and in terms of what we think is pace of play, like the only upgrade is to his pocketbook, right? His bank account. You know, the man got paid, God bless, but just in order to be an elite fantasy quarterback, you have to run or throw touchdowns at a high pace. He's not going to run. So can he throw touchdowns at a high pace? And I don't think so. Cooper Kupp, we hope he stays healthy, but certainly no guarantee there. And then it gets pretty thin after JSN.
Yep. Yeah. All right. Well, Lawrence, we talked about Justin Fields having a fairly high floor, but also a high ceiling. A guy who's got no floor and no ceiling is Anthony Richardson, who may be in a quarterback competition with Daniel Jones. You are the Anthony Richardson who's the whisperer.
There could be nothing more truer than saying no floor and no ceiling. Like, you couldn't have put it any better. In the way, Matthew, the way you put this together in the beginning of explaining this is what it is. Like, you don't like, if you have Anthony Richardson in Dynasty, if you're looking to, maybe get him now in the double-digit rounds of your fantasy draft because people might be sleeping on him, well, now you have to think about that. And that makes, because you have to think about it, your value goes down. And because they added Daniel Jones, someone who has similar skill sets, although I don't believe the running ability is the same. Anthony Richardson ran for 500 yards in 11 games, so that's like that's the part where you say there's no ceiling. But because they have Daniel Jones in the room now, it creates some questions.
Yep. Connor, I'm still buying Anthony Richardson stock because 2 things. One, I don't think any quarterback got more screwed by their wide receivers last year than Anthony Richardson with all the drops to a comical extent, particularly in the games against Detroit and New England. And then I thought after he came back from the benching, I thought he played materially better. And it was against some bad defenses, but in particular that game against the Jets, he flashed a really high level.
Where the way the game was called was phenomenal. Like, you saw the red zone running ability. You saw some throws down the field. We saw Alec Pierce really kind of find it last year. So I'm split with this one because it's the reverse. It's like the inverse Justin Fields. You like Fields now, not because you think he's a great quarterback, because he's starting. And when he starts, he is a fantasy viable, like Matthew said, low-end QB1. With Richardson, you don't know. I kind of lean into it that maybe you get him at a discount because I think it's easier to start the season with Anthony Richardson than it is with Daniel Jones and then go, oh, this isn't really going the way we hope. Let's go back to Anthony Richardson again. Like, how many times can you pull that string?
Yep.
So
Do you think, Matthew?
But the argument is just in terms of, did free agency help or hurt a player's fantasy value? And adding Daniel Jones hurt. And
that hurt his value.
In the offseason, the Colts have done two things. They've said Anthony Richardson is not guaranteed the starting job, and they brought in somebody who viably could start for the job. So it's just his fantasy value, I would argue, is worse today than it was 2 months ago.
Yeah, it's just like you said earlier, Daniel Jones, because he was literally doing nothing. Now he has the chance to start. Yeah, his fantasy value is higher now than it was 2 months ago.
Or lower. It costs you less. If you draft it today, you can get Anthony Richardson cheaper than you could 2 months ago.
Yes, definitely.
Yep. Would you take Anthony Richardson over Drake Maye, who's our next quarterback on the hate list? There's been some rumors linking Stephon Diggs to New England, which would help the Drake Maye situation a bit, but still he is relatively devoid of weapons.
Yeah, I mean, but if I had to draft today, it depends on where I am in a draft. Like if it's my number 2 quarterback for upside and it's best ball, I'd go with Richardson because I think there's more of a ceiling there. But if it's just like for my number 1 quarterback, the one thing I do know is that Drake Maye is going to start every game. Barring injury, he's going to start every game. He's going to get you some points with his legs. And yeah, maybe they add Stephon Diggs. The reason Drake Maye made the hate list is because they haven't added anyone, right? I mean, they've given this kid no weapons at all. And Stephon Diggs would be an upgrade, but like that's almost damning with faint praise, right? I mean, so you're telling me the best wide receiver in the Patriots next year is going to be a wide receiver who's over 30 coming off of a massive injury? Like, in his third system in 3 years? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and listen, we love chief ball catcher Stephon Diggs here, friend of the podcast. We've had Steph on the show. We like him. We root for him. When he's right, but just, we don't know where he is in the recovery from that injury. It would be his third offense in 3 years. The Patriots, all I heard at the Combine was that they were going to be, very aggressive in the wide receiver market.
Tried.
And they tried, and they came up short. They just weren't able to get
They added a couple of veteran offensive linemen.
Matt Collins, like when Matt Collins is your big signing. We like Matt Collins, but,
I think they draft a running back, too.
Yep. All right, well, speaking of running backs, let's jump to the love list there. Matthew, Chase Brown, low-end RB1 for 2025. There's been some chat that Chase Brown is going to see a lessened workload, but I think that's the type of thing where you need to really see it to believe it.
I do too. I mean, I think, the Bengals offseason, they could have added somebody a big name. We'll see what they do in the draft. I think they will draft a running back, but the fact that the only guy they added was Samaje Perine, who turns 30 in September, had less than 50 touches last season, and is known as a good pass blocker. So, I mean, what they're saying is like, on obvious third down passing situations, Perine will be in there, but Chase Brown's going to get a ton of work here. He's clearly going to be the guy, and you think about that final 8 games of the season where he was averaging over 23 touches a game, and, he was the 4th best running back in fantasy on a points per game basis, had a 13% target share, had over 115 yards from scrimmage per game. So the fact that the Bengals didn't add any legit competition, we don't know where Zach Moss is in recovery. Sounds like it's going to be quite a while before we see Moss back on.
Also, probably just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I don't think it matters. That's why they brought in Gainwell. But Gainwell could be a guy you could see the way he touched the football on the Eagles is how he'll touch the football on the Bengals, I assume.
Yep. Connor, a guy who probably 12 months ago was thought of in the same kind of vein as Chase Brown, as Jaylen Warren, who had a tough season for the Steelers with my man Najee Harris taking over that backfield. What do you think his upside is with Najee gone?
Well, there's just so many touches, right? I mean, obviously Najee vacates almost 300 touches from this backfield. I'm pretty positive this team is going to draft a workhorse running back in the draft. But that doesn't mean Warren doesn't have value. Remember, he had the soft tissue injury last preseason and it kind of just lingered into the regular season. I mean, look at when he gets involved in the pass game, which he will, he's very, very effective, especially in PPR. So the point is, did it help him in free agency? Yes, it did, because the lead back is gone, and they didn't make any significant additions that eat into Warren's workload. He just needs to be healthy coming out of camp this year. That was the reason for his drop-off last year.
When he gets work, right, he's got 8 career games with 15 or more touches, and he averages almost 14 fantasy points per game, over 90 yards from scrimmage in those games. When Jaylen Warren gets work, he's effective, and at least as it stands now, in an Arthur Smith offense that doesn't have a quarterback at the moment.
That's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they just direct snap it to Jaylen Warren every play. But anyway, Jaylen Warren's fantasy value certainly at least at the moment, he's a low-end RB2. We'll see who the Steelers add in the draft.
I was getting ahead of myself a little bit with Kenneth Gainwell, wrong AFC North team, but still the fact remains the way Kenneth Gainwell, I know you would.
But the problem is we couldn't because he's on the next graphic.
But I can't let it slide. The fact remains the way Kenneth Gainwell got the ball in Philly is how he'll probably get it in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, well, the man he is kind of replacing in a way, Lawrence Najee Harris, my man, my favorite player in the NFL, who is going to a Chargers offense that went a little bit under the radar. If J.K. Dobbins didn't do his MCL against the Ravens, J.K. Dobbins is going to have like 1,200 rushing yards, 12 touchdowns in that offense.
And I think J.K. Dobbins would have been back too if he would, but that's not the case. You got Najee Harris now. So, a lot's always talked about Najee Harris with the yards per carry. But the thing about Najee Harris, and I think the Chargers staff love this about him, is he always shows up. He does not miss games. 280-plus touches, 1,200-plus scrimmage yards in all 4 seasons that he played with Pittsburgh. He's dependable. You get near the goal line, we could see him get double-digit rushing touchdowns. I still think the Chargers are in play to draft a running back here, but I don't think it'll matter because Najee Harris will have a role just like he's had in Pittsburgh when folks try to write him off.
296 is the number. That's the carries vacated from Dobbins and the Gus Bus. That's a lot of touches. Where if they draft a running back, and it won't be early, in my opinion, I'm with you, Lawrence. Najee Harris is going to eat. You couldn't dream up a better landing spot, Matthew.
You couldn't at all. I mean, you know me, I'm not the biggest Najee Harris fan, but I will say the man does
show
up.
Man.
But he does show up like he's healthy. You know what I mean? The guy doesn't miss games. If there's one downside, he's not involved in the passing game. The Chargers don't throw the ball to the running back, so I think that limits his upside somewhat. But still, he's going to be an easy top 20 running back that no one's going to want to draft. And then, he's going to be like this year's James Conner. He's just going to fall in drafts because he's not exciting. He's not fun to have on your roster, but you're going to look up at the end of the year and he's going to be running back 17.
Indeed. All right, let's take a look at some others receiving votes headlined by a perennial love. Aaron Jones back in Minnesota as RB1, joined by Jordan Mason, who is very interesting.
I think it'll be 65-35, but I think the best landing spot was Aaron Jones going back to Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell, who loves him and who kind of unlocked his passing game potential last year, really used him a lot in the passing game. Mason will take some of the between the tackle stuff, but going back to Minnesota in this offense with KOC and having a guy like Jordan Mason behind him, I think upgrades both their values as well. Meanwhile, Javonte Williams, not the biggest Javonte Williams fan either. I don't think he looked great last year, but certainly hard to argue that his fantasy value hasn't improved going from a very crowded backfield in Denver to now Dallas, where he's competing with Deuce Vaughn and Miles Sanders. I expect the Cowboys to add somebody in the draft, but as we stand here today, Javonte Williams is your starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys, and certainly that's an upgrade in his fantasy value from last year. And finally, of course, with the trade of Jordan Mason to Minnesota, it means Isaac Guerendo is the default backup to Chris McCaffrey. If you're a backup running back on San Francisco and you're behind CMC, you've got immediate value.
Indeed. All right, let's jump to the hate list, which Lawrence is headlined by Joe Mixon, who had some awesome flashes and a heavy workload last year, but now loses Laramie Tunsil and Kenyon Green.
Yeah, started that first half of the season off great last year, got hurt, the wheels kind of fell off just on the offense as a whole, but now we just talked about Laramie Tunsil earlier. Despite the Texans' line not being as good, Laramie Tunsil was still that guy. He was still the left tackle, the franchise left tackle. You lose him, you lose Kenyon Green, so that's 2 guys off their offensive line, and you just don't know what to expect with how the whole offense ended last year.
Yeah, I mean, this offensive line right now on paper is not a good-looking unit. It's as simple as that, and they traded away their best one in Laramie Tunsil. And I understand the idea of trying to be a year early than a year late on that move, but they got to invest serious capital into it with the NFL draft. I mean, the additions, they're not slated to start, but Laken Tomlinson and Engram, they were 2 of the worst guards in all of football last year. So it's not like the guys they brought in as insurance options are an upgrade over anything they have, and that obviously has a bad trickle effect on Mixon.
And by the way, not just Mixon, like I didn't put in my quarterback, but I easily could put C.J. Stroud in my quarterback hate as well, because he loses Diggs, he loses Tank Dell, he does get Christian Kirk. We'll talk about him in a second, but one of the big issues with C.J. Stroud last year was like he got the yips. He was behind that offensive line, and he was under pressure so much. And the fact that they have now, lessened this offensive line, like you don't feel great about C.J. Stroud going into the season either. because again, he started to see ghosts a little bit last year.
Yeah, he became erratic.
Yeah.
It didn't look like the same guy from his first year, and that was because of the supporting cast.
Yeah, that game against Baltimore on Christmas, he looked completely rattled because of the O-line. Well, a team that has invested in its O-line, kind of Carolina, over the past couple of years, and Rico Dowdle, who quietly had a really good year for Dallas, but now has a crowded situation.
Yeah, and what did we like about him? Volume. And what did he lose going to the Panthers? Volume. That's the problem. It's as simple as that. Chuba Hubbard is the guy there. I wouldn't be surprised with Jonathan Brooks' injury that they draft a pass-catching back, and it kind of becomes an interesting 2A and 2B with Dowdle and that rookie. So, Matthew, we know what this backfield is.
Right. It's hard to argue that Rico Dowdle is a significant upgrade over Miles Sanders, and we saw what Miles Sanders did last year for fantasy, which was nothing. Chuba Hubbard's the man that got paid. He's going to be the lead back. Rico Dowdle is merely depth for the Panthers. He went from being the starting running back to now depth. Downgrade in fantasy value.
Okay, we're going to hit our first break. When we come back, free agent love-hate for the pass catchers.
Everything's about making Trevor, putting all pieces around Trevor. Well, then you trade and release two of his top pass catchers. What was the thinking there in adding Engram to Kirk?
Yeah, really have so much respect for the people and the players that both Christian and Evan are, right? And they meant a lot to the locker room. And, you know, we'll continue to bring those types of people and players into our ecosystem, but we needed a little bit more flexibility to address the larger scale roster after, you know, some departures across the OL as well. So that was a big part in that, but we do feel like we're in a better position today than we were a couple of weeks ago.
Different vibe in Jacksonville these days.
I like it.
We've got characters that look like they'd be in like season 1 of Girls at a warehouse rave in Brooklyn. I like it. Brian Thomas Jr. Lawrence. He is a guy who clearly, well, he was magnificent last season, went a little bit on the radar because of the Jags. Struggles overall, but he could lead. It's not inconceivable he could lead the league in targets next year.
That's not out of consideration at all. Liam Cohen already said the passing game would run through him. They're going to look to run him on more routes to get him the ball short, middle, and long. He was wide receiver 1 in all the games that Engram and Christian Kirk missed last year. Like, that's big. He should be easily within the top 6 or 7 receivers drafted this year just based on the expected volume alone. So, gotta love Brian Thomas Jr. regardless.
I mean, just the fact he got labeled as a vertical guy in the draft, and then by the second half of the season, Jacksonville was like, no, let's throw him screens. Let's get him underneath routes. Let's get the ball in his hands and him running after the catch. It was such a positive sign for his development, and there's nobody in this offense that scares you eating into his workload. Like, Parker Washington is a solid slot. Diami Brown is a field-stretching number 3. Like, what are you nervous of?
Gabe Davis is there.
He's there?
Money.
He exists.
Yeah, that's exactly.
Brenton Strange hours.
Brenton Strange. Oh, we like Brenton Strange. But
Yeah.
right, exactly. Just you know, in the 4 games in which Christian Kirk and Evan Engram missed last season, again, like he was awesome. And so, yeah, sky's the limit. Brian Thomas on the short list for ride or die next year.
Yeah,
I was gonna say that.
Be very
Where do you think he gets drafted, Matthew?
What?
How early do you think he gets drafted? By the time we get to August.
By the time we get to August, I think he's not going to be in the 3rd round of any draft. I think he's second. I think he's a second round.
I think he's barely second round.
Yeah, I mean, I think probably late first, early second. I think the hype on him will get kind of ridiculous.
Yep. Connor, Davante Adams didn't work out in New York, but he still looked like Davante Adams, and now he gets an upgraded quarterback.
This is a huge upgrade for the Rams and a great upgrade for him. Just the fact that you're going from whatever the Jets were out there doing on offense to Sean McVay,
To a
right?
professional franchise?
Yeah. So the real coach.
Yeah.
So it's just like it was like him and Aaron Rodgers playing street ball, especially the play where they threw the ball back and forth to each other, and then I think Davante got lit up. To Sean McVay, who's going to tell you what to do, and you should probably listen. Like, do I need deeper analysis than that?
Aaron Rodgers
you
and
don't.
Davante Adams, they were just like, man, the hell with everybody else, man. They just playing
Garrett
like.
Wilson was standing there like, all
And
right.
I would argue, Connor, you tell me if you disagree with this. I mean, a lot of people are going to talk about, like, you can't make up for the connection between Rodgers and Adams, which
Sure.
is born over so many years and so many practices and such their close friendship. But I would argue at this stage of their careers, Matthew Stafford is a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers.
Yes.
Like, Stafford played at a higher level last year. This is an upgrade at quarterback for Davante Adams from what he played with last year to what he'll play with this year.
So this is where it hurts, in my opinion. He caught 8 touchdowns last year. I wouldn't guarantee that this year.
Yeah.
But in terms of the actual game-by-game consistent production, I would point that the arrow goes up.
I say this about Matthew Stafford, too. It's like he didn't have, he had to come to LA and build rapport with Cooper Kupp. That happened in an instant. He lost Cooper Kupp, rookie, 5th-round pick, Puka Nacua. That happened week 1. He used to, so he's done it with multiple receivers. I don't think it'll have any problem here with Davante Adams.
Yep. Next guy on the love list, Chris Godwin, Matthew, who ends up in probably the best possible situation remaining in Tampa.
Yeah, I mean, I think just, coming back to Tampa Bay, an offense that he's familiar with, because they're going to run the same offense, even though Liam Cohen's now in Jacksonville. They're going to run the same offense, a quarterback that he's familiar with in his same spot. But to me, the biggest piece of the free agency here is that not only did he return to a familiar situation where last year prior to getting hurt, this guy's a top 5 fantasy wide receiver and just absolutely balling out. But more importantly is like just a massive amount of guaranteed money. No one knows his health better than the Buccaneers. Some other team might have been a little bit more desperate and thrown money at him. The Patriots offered him more money, just trying to get him there because, hey, we need a guy, right? And who cares whether you're healthy or not? But the Buccaneers, knowing where he is in his rehab, knowing how injured he is, and still said, yeah, here's a boatload of guaranteed money, I think is a pretty good indicator that we should expect the same Chris Godwin back next year for the Buccaneers and fantasy managers.
Yep. Lawrence, big upgrades for the Raiders pass catchers in general, just going from the situation they had last year with Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell to now Geno Smith. And so Brock Bowers and Jacoby Myers, both their outlooks look a lot better.
Yeah, you love it for Brock Bowers, although he was going to be the top tight end off the board, even if they brought back Gardner Minshew and whoever they could scrum up, but it helps Jacoby Myers, maybe Trey Tucker if you're in a deeper league. The more important thing is I don't think, in Brock Bowers' case, I don't think there's a player that they could add via free agency or the draft at this point that'll affect any type of motion that he had, that led all tight ends, 112 receptions, almost 1,200 rushing yards, only the 5 touchdowns, but so much volume, it doesn't matter.
But again, it's just, it's think about what he did last year with inconsistent, I'm being kind here, inconsistent quarterback play and his rookie year, and now in his second year in the league with and I say this as a sign of respect, as a professional quarterback. Like Geno can run an offense. Geno can throw the ball on time and in rhythm, and so I think this is a pretty big upgrade at quarterback for both these guys.
Yep. Connor, a team that has been definitely painted as a free agency loser is the Niners because they lost a lot of guys, didn't really add that much. I still think this offense is going to be sick.
Because they develop guys every year.
Yeah, and 2 of those guys are Jauan Jennings, who at times looked like a wide receiver 1 playing with Brock Purdy, and then Ricky Pearsall, who we forget was taken high in the draft and got shot last year and came back from that and showed flashes towards the end of the season.
Right. I mean, with Jennings, first off, this is a guy that I will want to leave my drafts with this summer. Ayuk is somebody that tore his ACL and MCL at the end of October. That's late point of a season-ending injury. When you look at the history in fantasy of wide receivers coming off a torn ACL the previous season, it doesn't paint a pretty picture. It does not paint a pretty picture. And the most recent example we saw last year was Mike Williams, who had nothing with the Jets and nothing with the Steelers. I'm not factoring a huge year the first half of the season for Ayuk. Who does that impact? Jauan Jennings.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if Ayuk starts the season, just given all this. And, I mean, Ayuk is younger than Williams in terms of where they are with their careers. But, by the way, Ayuk wasn't great prior to the injury.
No.
He'd held out of all camp. He'd held out all camp and they finally got the contract situation.
He didn't look right.
He didn't look great. He was out of rhythm, and then the injury, which is upsetting. But certainly in terms of, we don't expect Ayuk to start the season on time, and even if he does, he'll probably be limited. And the fact that Deebo Samuel leaving opens up a lot of targets here. Jauan Jennings and Ricky Pearsall both have had a pretty good free agency in terms of their fantasy value.
Yep, I'm buying Niners stock. I still think they're the 3rd best team in the NFC after Philly and Detroit, though. Washington will have an argument there as well. Evan Engram, who perhaps gets talked about more in fantasy relative to real-life NFL than any other player in history, but he now gets Bo Nix as his new quarterback in Denver, who loves to throw the ball short, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, so listen, back-to-back, this is for Evan Engram, like back-to-back seasons with at least a 23% target share, but his average depth of the target is just 5.2. That's 4th lowest among tight ends. I mean, Evan Engram is somebody who kind of lives near the line of scrimmage, and he's kind of been a PPR merchant, as we talk about certainly in fantasy, and that fits in perfectly with what Sean Payton and Bo Nix liked to do. Bo Nix, 26th among qualified quarterbacks in average depth of target. He took a few deep shots, but a lot of stuff was underneath. Bo Nix, coming out of college, was known for being accurate and short, accurate passes was a hallmark of Bo Nix's passing, quick release. And so I think this is a really nice move and landing spot for Engram and for Bo Nix. And when you think about sort of Mims and Sutton, running down the sidelines, Ingram's going to get a lot of the underneath stuff for Denver next year.
Okay, let's take a look at some others receiving votes, headlined by Garrett Wilson, Matthew, who now has a Jets passing game all to himself.
Yeah, he does. Obviously, Davante Adams, had a 30% target share last year. So that's suddenly up for grabs. They'll add to it, but Garrett Wilson's going to be the alpha, especially with his college quarterback under center. Christian Kirk, you see there. This is a nice matchup, nice landing spot for him in Houston, where Stephon Diggs, who had a 24% target share and run a lot of his routes out of the slot last year, was wide receiver 16. Diggs isn't going to be back. Neither is Tank Dell. We don't expect this year. So Kirk should be the number 2 in a competent passing attack there in Houston. Zach Ertz, we talked about just being able to return to Jayden Daniels, and that offense should be good. Gesicki getting to return with Joe Burrow. It's a nice offseason for him. And Brenton Strange, who we just sort of mentioned there, but Jacksonville actually ranked 8th in tight end target share last season. They were 10th in total tight end targets here. This is a guy who had at least 9 fantasy points in 7 of his 9 career games where he got a double-digit target share. And so with Evan Engram, Christian Kirk both gone, Brenton Strange is going to be the starting tight end of a Liam Cohen offense. We saw last year what he did with Cade Otton. I do think Brenton Strange is going to be like a top 12-ish fantasy tight end. It's been a good offseason for Brenton Strange.
He was a second-round pick. People forget that he's not some scrub.
Right.
And this is a good opportunity for him.
Indeed. Okay, let's jump to the hate list, Lawrence. One of the most fascinating pass game situations in the league, if you want to use that word charitably. DK Metcalf and George Pickens. Not sure if they're both going to be on the team, and not sure who's going to be their quarterback. But where do you think that you'll be drafting these guys in many leagues?
You don't know who their quarterback is? Mason Rudolph.
I don't know who their quarterback is.
The quarterback, Mason Rudolph, offensive coordinator Arthur Smith, who, by the way, once coached Drake London, who was wide receiver 44 and 42 in his 2 years of Arthur Smith. Drake London was now a top 20 receiver. So, am I drafting DK Metcalf? Sure, you could find value anywhere, right? But we're talking like 8th round, 7th round type. So we have to figure out who the quarterback is first before we really talk about if we're going to draft DK Metcalf, George Pickens.
They say that if you've got 2 quarterbacks, you don't have one quarterback. They also say that if Mason Rudolph's your quarterback, you don't have a quarterback.
Spot on.
Still much to be solved there. Cooper Kupp, very strange landing spot for Kupp in Seattle with the overlap with JSN.
Right. Where do we like JSN? The slot, typically. Where do we like Cooper Kupp? The slot, typically. I think the only thing I could say is Cooper Kupp hasn't been healthy enough the last couple of years that it makes me look at JSN that differently. I'm still going to buy in on JSN. I'm still confident in him having a really good season with Sam Darnold. I think for anything, you just look at Cooper Kupp in this spot and just go, I'm good at this point. I'm tired of figuring out when he's healthy. I'm tired of figuring out what his usage is. And now he's away from Sean McVay. I'm just out. It doesn't matter where he falls.
It's a nice story for Cooper Kupp because he gets paid. He gets to go home to Washington, and play in front of his hometown crowd. But still, it feels weird. JSN is good enough to play outside. He can win on the outside. He can play all over. But yes, in an ideal world, JSN is in the slot. And yes, Cooper Kupp can play outside. But we don't want either of them. They've had their most success consistently when they've played in the slot. So certainly, I'm still with you. JSN is still like a high upside wide receiver too, but this is a bad landing spot for Cooper Kupp.
Yep, last 2 guys quickly, Matthew. Jalen McMillan and Mark Andrews both suffer. Mark Andrews, DeAndre Hopkins arriving to take end zone targets, and Jalen McMillan just dealing with the Chris Godwin.
Yeah, I think that the path for McMillan to have another breakout was Godwin going to another team, and that McMillan could move to the slot, which is his natural position, and sort of be the number 2, but he's now going to be the clear number 3 or 4 option on this passing attack behind potentially Cade Otton, who came on last year. So I think McMillan makes the 8 list just because Godwin came back. And then Andrews just tough into the season. His biggest value last year was touchdowns. DeAndre Hopkins, I think at this stage of his career, that's going to be a big part of what he brings to Baltimore, is a big red zone target for Lamar Jackson. So any threat to that for Andrews hurts his value. I'm still not convinced Andrews starts the season with Baltimore. I could see him on another team.
Yeah.
By
say likely.
When all is said and done.
Indeed. All right, we're going to hit our last break. When we come back, it's last call.
I need to stop underestimating Travis Hunter because I can't believe what he pulled off at the college level where maybe he's just that guy that will be the unicorn that does this.
As a defensive player, he could still maybe be a #1 pick.
Yeah, absolutely. He's my #1 player right now. So, and I think it's close. Him and Abdul Carter and Ashton Genty.
DraftKings Sportsbook is the #1 sportsbook for live betting, and new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets instantly. Just download the app and use the promo code BERRY when you sign up. DraftKings Sportsbook.
The crown is yours.
Okay, let's take a look at the odds for the first known quarterback off the board. Connor in the NFL draft ranking special talked about guys like Abdul Carter, who's the favorite here at -350, Travis Hunter +210. Also talked about Ashton Genty, who I don't think will be the winner in this market in particular. He's 30-1. Lawrence, who are you taking here?
I'm going with the value. Travis Hunter here, +210. I just don't see how a team could pass up on a guy who's so good at defense, but yet won the Biletnikoff Award for best wide receiver. He's a guy in the NFL that could play cornerback full-time and still go out there and play 30 to 35 offensive plays.
Yep, here you go, Connor.
Here's the scenario you're rooting for. I think Carter still deserves to be the heavy favorite as he is, but if you want Travis Hunter to take this home, and I think the value is there, you need a team, specifically the Browns or a team that trades with them, to fall in love with Shedeur Sanders, where the draft goes Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, and I think the Giants would take Travis Hunter over Abdul Carter. The Giants like their pass rushers. They need that corner wide receiver hybrid. So that's the scenario you're rooting for.
Yep, Hunter for me as well, +210, best player in the draft, and I think that scenario could unfold.
By the way, anything else is not, like, I would not play anything else on this board.
Yep.
Yeah, there you go. I'm going to do the exact same thing. I mean,
it's narrow for a reason.
All the reasons you guys said. Also, I guess, there's still like those lingering rumors that Carter may not be 100% healthy.
Stress fracture in his foot, but he doesn't want the surgery.
I know. So that's another little kind of tiebreaker.
A little ominous. Speaking of ominous, let's take a look at your March Madness bracket, Matthew. Let's walk us through this. Who you got? The Gators.
I'm going to the Gators. Chomp, chomp.
Yes.
Don't they say that?
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Yep. They even do a little hand motion when they say it.
Exactly. Listen, I grew up in College Station, Texas, so I'm rooting for the Aggies. They're a 4 seed this year. My son Connor goes to Alabama, as you know, so I'm also rooting for the Tide. It killed me not to get the Tide or Alabama in it, but I will say because of both, I root for Texas A&M, I root for Alabama because of, where I grew up, and I've watched a lot of SEC basketball this year. They're awesome. To me, Florida's the best team I've seen all year long. So it's a little bit of chalk getting up to there, but that's why I picked the Gators.
Well, SEC got a lot of teams in there, so it's a good chance the national champion will come from the SEC.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, we're
all
done,
right,
Matthew.
listen, that music means it's closing time. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Preseason love-hate column the free agency love-hate column is up on NBCSports.com for free. Check that out. Of course, I'm a company man. For Lawrence, Connor, Jay, and all the big showers out there, I'm merely Matthew Berry. Happy bachelor party, Damien. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.